tool support in LangChain4j. My Kotlin book is in a Java bundle, but not my Java book. A bit about lunar landers and the usual collection of silly tweets and toots. Welcome to Tales from the Jar Side. Welcome. My name is Ken Cousin. This is my free weekly newsletter, Tales from the Jar Side, where we try to tell you not just about technology, but why and how to use these things and when not to. The subtitle is Don't Give Up on Your Dreams, Go Back to Bed. Yeah, sorry, couldn't resist. Welcome, fellow jarheads, to Tales from the Jar Side, the Cousin IT newsletter for the week of February 18th through 25th, 2024. This week I only had my regular Trinity College course for undergraduates called Large Scale and Open Source Development, and a lot of that was taken up by a guest lecturer, the inimitable Paul King, the head of the Groovy framework, as a guest speaker. The regular info messages, I'll just mention one that regular readers of and listeners to, and of course video viewers of this newsletter, are affectionately known as jarheads and are far more intelligent, sophisticated, and attractive than the average newsletter reader or listener or viewer. If you wish to become a jarhead, please subscribe using the button on the newsletter or in the YouTube channel. Let's begin by talking about tool support in LangChain4j. Last week, in the newsletter, I talked about how I was going to make a video about this, but that it wasn't going to be great because I was a little disappointed in the tool support for LangChain4j. And I knew even when I wrote that maybe I was missing something, that it just didn't feel right, that my results were correct, of course, but there was something off and I didn't know what it was. So I spent a lot of time Monday or Tuesday really going through it again and trying to understand what was going on. And I'm glad I didn't make the video because in reality, what I needed to do was figure it out because now I understand it. In fact, what I was going to call the video after I figured it out was I didn't get LangChain4j Tools until I did. But that seemed a little too self-referential. I decided to just call it the definitive guide to tool support in LangChain4j. Now, definitive sounds a little official there or a little bit presumptuous, but honestly, there's not that much to it. I just was missing a key concept. I did get a neat thumbnail on the video generated by Dolly 3, of course, where I basically told it I wanted the LangChain4j parrot, and then I did have to ask it to put a chain around the neck, holding tools and working with computers, and well, you could see what I got. I don't think I could ever get that again, but okay. And it even threw a hat on there that says LangChain4j on it, no less. So I was quite pleased with that. So last week when I was trying to identify the problem, I said, well, say I have this calculator class, and this again is from the LangChain4j examples project. So I didn't write this. This is one of their samples. And in their calculator class, they have an @tool annotation that says adds two numbers, and they've got an add method. And then they show in the class called Service with Tools example that when they use the AI services mechanism and a builder to create an OpenAI chat model, then you could add that calculator to the tools method, add some memory, build it, and then go ahead and answer questions, and it worked really nicely. In their example, they had three methods. They had one to add a couple of numbers. They had one to take the square root of a value, and one to get the length of a string. And of course, the delegation worked just fine. The only problem is now, if you look at that ChatGPT, even 3.5 is pretty good at solving all those problems. Now, that's just ChatGPT. I have tried that same example with several other AI tools. I did it on Gemma and even Gemini. I did it on Olama. I used Llama 2. I used Mistral. I used a couple of the uncensored ones as well, and none of them did a very good job on it. Mixtral did when I made the number of parameters big enough. And I made a video of that, but I didn't include it in this video because the video that I'm showing now, it got kind of long. I may make that a bonus video coming up sometime this week. At any rate, the problem I was trying to solve was a related one that also came from the LangChain4j examples project, just with some modifications. They had a person extractor, and I threw in unstructured text, and I wanted to extract a person from this. So I had a person record that included first name, last name, and date of birth as a local date. And the paragraph I sent was, as you see here, Captain Picard was born in Le Bar, France, on Earth on the 13th of Juillet, 281 years in the future. I actually had that computed. His given name, Jean-Luc, is of French origin. He and his brother Robert were raised in the family vineyard Chateau Picard. And the problem was what tools to supply. So because the difficulty was the date of birth, I mean, after all, the first name and the last name are embedded in there. It just had to find them, and it always did. That I never had a problem with. It found the Jean-Luc and the Picard part, no problem. The difficulty was figuring out what year is 281 years in the future. So I tried putting in an add method and a subtract method, and that's what I was complaining about last week, where it would call those methods, but sporadically. It was not predictable. Sometimes it would call them, sometimes it wouldn't. Sometimes it would just plug in whatever numbers it found, and whether they were relevant or not, and get back values. And it was just a mess. So when I was getting a problem, I finally decided to go look into this. And as it turns out, the tool support in LangChain4j is actually based on the function calling section of the OpenAI platform docs. OpenAI is the only LLM, the only large language model I know of that has this kind of tool support built into it. And in the function calling, they make it very clear that the chat completions API does not call the function. Instead, the model generates JSON that you can use to call it yourself. And then they get into a rather complex example, not in here, but in the API reference, if I was to go over to that. And it's a little hard to see here, but this big curl request with a model and a message, and then this tools is trying to invoke a function to get the current weather, and you pass in parameters for the function you're calling with a location and a unit. And then down here, this was the response, and you see what you got back was in the role of assistant, you got this tool calls array, and it goes on, and then you still have to call it. And I was like, geez, who wants to do that? That seems like a lot of work. So what I finally figured out is that LangChain4j is invoking the function for you. And since I'm the one creating the query, there's no reason not to customize that function to be exactly what I need. Let me take a look at the code. Let me show you the code to see exactly what I'm talking about. So what you see here is the simple interface that is the person extractor. I fleshed out the system message a little so that it doesn't just say extract information about a person using the fields contained in the person record. I said the person record's in the class path. I even said if you use JSON as an intermediate format, which I know it does, then return only the JSON data. Don't wrap it in anything, because it had a tendency to do that, and that would throw off the parser. So my user message was simply convert the person information in the argument here, the text string, into a record. And the person record, as I mentioned, is simply first name, last name, and local date as the birth date. Here, however, is the tool. Now, the tool is in this class that I call datetime tool, because why not? I threw in a logger because I wanted to see this get invoked. And now you see I have a function specifically called years from now. Now, I don't think the function name is what matters. I think it's the argument to the tool annotation. And the annotation argument is get the year for a given number of years in the future, or a given number of, well, it looks like I've cut that out, years in the future. There we go. So this is simply using the java.time.localDate class to instantiate the current date, and then add as many years as were given in the argument, and then get the year as an integer to return it, and we're good. So here's the actual test now, is I compute that years from now. That's what's going to give me my 281. And then there is that text that I showed in the newsletter. And when I say extract the person from the test, I'm going to check first name, last name, birth date with the day a month, and the month of the year. Those are, again, explicitly in there, even though one of them's in French. Shouldn't be a problem at all. It's the year, and I want that to be within 5 years of 2305, which would be the right answer. And I'm running this on GPT 3.5, which is the one that would struggle. And you can see when I execute this that it did in fact call the years from now function and with an argument of 281, and it returned the proper result, which is over here, the 2305. And if you scroll down, you can see there's the actual birth date. It's all printed correctly. Everything's good. I don't know why it wound up calling it again. Sometimes it calls it again for some odd reason, and I don't quite get that. I'm going to have to look into that a bit more. But at any rate, it did do the right thing. We got the right answer out of it. So going back to the newsletter, I've mentioned all that in the newsletter more or less. Now, I do want to point out my friend Craig Walls, who's a big player in the Spring framework area, has been talking about function calling and how he wanted it added to the Spring AI project for months. And I never quite understood why, because it looks so tedious to me. And now that I see you can get the framework to invoke it on your behalf, yeah, I see how that can become much, much better. Now, Spring AI did in fact finally add that to their project, but it's done differently, and I'll probably make a video on that another time. So what I did is I opened up a private browser. I went to Amazon and I looked up a MacBook Air in several different countries. And as I point out here, I said, okay, the MacBook Air costs this value in Great Britain pounds, or in pounds sterling, really, and then this one in Indian rupees, and this in dollars, and this in Japanese yen. Which is the best deal? So I didn't try to get it to go look these things up for me. That's probably doable, but that would probably be a paid service, and I didn't want to get into that. I certainly didn't want to dig up the pages myself or anything like that. Instead, I simply hard-coded the numbers in just to prove a point. And of course, the best deal was, in fact, in USD, probably because of where I made the request, but who knows? More importantly, however, you can see in the logger, it's converting each of those values to dollars using the exchange rates. Why it decided to convert USD to USD, I don't really know. But okay, at least it remained the same and got a good answer. So that's what that exercise was all about. That's what the video is all about. The LangChain4j people seemed to like it, so they were happy and they retweeted it, my tweet that mentioned it, and therefore that video is doing rather well, as I should say. So that's all that was about the video. I did point out that I made the video using this Tella.tv tool, and I included my affiliate link in here in case anybody wants to check it out. The only problem with Tella.tv is it doesn't have an easy way to add in little notes that slide in from the side. You know, I use that all the time. If you're watching this video, you know. Also, there's not an easy way to remove the green screen background. In this video, I'm not going to remove the green screen background, but in others I have. And therefore, I exported the video as it was and then imported it into ScreenFlow, which is what I normally use, and tidied it up there. So we'll see how that goes. I don't know if I'm going to use that mechanism a lot, but it's a step along the way. So much for that. Hope that is interesting to you. Now, the next section I entitled Adventures in Lunar Engineering. Like so many people in IT, I, in fact, was a career changer. I was a research scientist, or as I mentioned here, my original undergraduate degrees were in mechanical engineering and in math, and then I went to grad school and I got degrees in aerospace engineering primarily. And that meant that I worked as a research scientist for almost 12 years. I spent a lot of it at United Technologies Research Center, which no longer exists. That's how you know you're getting older, when all the companies you used to work for no longer exist. Any rate, that was lots of math and lots of Fortran. But I was very much into astro stuff, of course, like all the kids my age. You know, I was a child of the late 60s and early 70s at the height of the Apollo program. So I wanted to work for NASA, although, as I admit here, what I really wanted was I wanted to go to Starfleet Academy. I wanted to be the captain of a starship. You know, I wanted to be James T. Kirk, hero of the galaxy, and all that. But that future is still persisting and not getting here, so settled for the other approach. So at any rate, I was paying attention to the Odyssey lander that was sent by Intuitive Machines to the moon, just like I was watching when the Japanese sent up a lander a few weeks ago to land on the moon. And just like that lander from Japan, the Odyssey spun or tripped or whatever and wound up on its side. And there's an article that I included here, a guest article from the New York Times. If you're interested in looking at the details, so be it. And I get it. It's not easy. The gravitational mass and inertial mass are the same, but because gravitational acceleration on the moon is only 1/6 that of Earth, there's not nearly as much force pulling down. Whereas once you're rotating, the inertial mass means you got the same rotational acceleration that you would have anywhere else. It's just going to be a lot harder to keep things upright. So once it started tipping, there wasn't much they could do about it. But all of this was a setup for this particular post that I saw on Mastodon. Fiona Craig posted leaked schematic of the latest lunar lander design, which I thought was pretty good. I was tempted to add a picture of good old Weebles. The Weebles wobble, but they don't fall down. But I didn't. I did hear since writing the newsletter that it may be that part of the reason that the landers are not quite like this is that the rocket that is being provided to them is fairly narrow. So if it really cuts down on the volume if you restrict the width to be greater than the height, so you get the low center of gravity, that's going to be a problem. So we'll see if that affects things in the future. So there's several more. I think there's 5 more attempts at lunar landers from various countries around the world this year. Hopefully the others will have better luck. I mean, it was a long way to go for that gag, but it was something that I paid a lot of attention to this week, so I thought I'd mention it. Another thing that came up is kind of a side point. I have a book called Kotlin Cookbook, and I saw about a week and a half ago, I think this might have been in last week's newsletter as well, that a group that was surveying Kotlin books called Most Recommended Books, I don't know who they are, apparently they recommended mine among several others. It said 8 best Kotlin books or something like that. And you can see I grabbed the tweet and it's got my book in it, which, okay, great. I don't know if that'll affect anything, but so be it. But this week, a friend of mine texted me that apparently my Kotlin book also wound up in a Humble bundle from O'Reilly. Now, if you look at the Humble bundles, then they are a bunch of books you could buy for one price. And you could either get the 5 items or 10 items or 15. And when I looked into this, the 5 items, well, that doesn't have my book, does it? And then the 10 doesn't either, although I do have one little segment of the 97 Things book. But then you go through all 10 and no, mine's not there either. But if you look at 15, there's my Kotlin Cookbook. So if anybody's willing to pay $25 to get all those books, well, great. The only thing that I wondered about is, as I pointed out here, I have a Java book, it's called Modern Java Recipes. And why they're including my Kotlin book in the Java bundle and not my Java book, I don't know. Maybe the Kotlin book isn't selling and they thought they'd package it in there. And there were some Scala books there too. So I don't really know, but I thought I'd mention it. Now, honestly, is it a big deal? It's not enough of a big deal for me to contact anybody at O'Reilly and ask. So we'll see what happens. Next time I'm talking to an editor there, I may bring it up and say, what was that all about? But it's not like it's a problem or anything. At any rate, it was mostly just a chance to point it out to all of you. Let's move on to the tweets and toots. As tweets and toots go, this was a relatively serious one. This was a snapshot of something that was posted on Mastodon, I believe, or it might have been in a tweet and then magnified. Let me read you parts of it. The person wrote in two separate posts, I had a tattoo client ask if I ever used AI to design tattoos for me. And of course, what he's pointing out is he spent all this time building up the expertise himself. And he goes on into the second part to point out, look, if you have a friend who likes to bake, asking them if they'd like to just buy cupcakes at the store instead of making them kind of misses the whole point. They want to make cupcakes. That's kind of why they're doing it. Art, as he points out, isn't a slog or a chore or something I want to avoid. Art is fun. It's rewarding. It feels good to do it. You may well be asking me if I want AI to watch television for me. It doesn't make any sense. I'm not participating. We gain nothing from it. Now, that's really good. I do like the comment, but as I point out, the problem is it glosses over the times when things are not working, when you're struggling, when you're under the gun, when you've got a deadline, when you're not sure what to do. And that's when the AI assistance is going to wheedle its way into your attempts. When the words of the music or the code won't flow, then that's what AI stuff can do. Now, I'm hoping the result will be is that when I'm stuck, I can get an AI to help me get unstuck. The challenge will be how quickly will I lower my standards to go, oh, yeah, that looks fine, and just accept it in order to be done or beat a deadline mostly right now, I use the AI tools for writing things I don't want to write, like proposals for new classes or, summaries of documents. No, I don't want to do all that. Let it do it. But the stuff that I care about, I wouldn't have an AI tool write this newsletter. That's the fun part. Why would I want to do that? But we'll see. So, at any rate, that was the serious one. Moving on, this was pretty clever. Let me magnify that if I can. Yep. It says, so he got juju eyeball hair down to his knee. He wear no shoe shine. He got monkey finger, walrus, I think it's gumbo, actually. Oh no, sideboard. I got to be honest, Mr. Lennon, I'm having a hard time getting this sketch to come together over me, right? Pretty good gag, actually. I liked it. But I decided to magnify that. So I went to DALL-E 3 and I said, hey, can you draw that? So here's my conversation with DALL-E 3. It said, please draw an image related to this description. And I put the description in, and it immediately replied, I'm unable to generate images based on your request due to our content policy. I said, what content policy? What did I violate? I can always remove that part. And what it pointed out was, of course, it recognized the lyrics as coming from Come Together by the Beatles. And that is, as it says here, our content policy restricts the creation of images that are directly derived from copyrighted material, including specific song lyrics. Like, I didn't know that. Okay, fair enough. I could try running it through an uncensored model, but I don't know too many uncensored image models. And the image models that would work like that, I don't want to install on my machine. They're huge and they take a lot of tweaking, and that's more work than I really had in mind. But instead, I went to the Tales from the Jar Side theme song, K-pop version, which I generally play at the end of many of my videos. And I assured the generator, the DALL-E 3 image generator, that these lyrics are by no means copyrighted. And in fact, what I didn't say is that GPT-4 generated these images these lyrics rather, back in June or July, whatever it was. And there they are. So I typed in the lyrics manually and I said, give me that image. And this is what it came up with. And I suppose I could magnify that, but why would I want to? I see the word Kotlin over here, although I don't know what the rest of that is. And then Tales from the Jar Side, and this is presumably supposed to be inspired or something like that. And there's something that sort of says groovy, sort of, but not really. And I have no idea what that creature is. I guess is that a cat? Sort of. Yeah, I said that happened. I think we'll just back away slowly and leave it alone. This post was very clever. It said, who called it pound sterling and not Britcoin? Need the rim shot for that, of course. I definitely used that gag in my video that I described above when I used the exchange rates. I just had to. In this one called Waiting for Oppenheimer, I point out the Barbie movie's been out on cable for weeks. I don't know why the Oppenheimer movie hasn't made it there yet. So here was this observation from the mostly harmless Mastodon feed. It says, there's a certain radius from the epicenter of a nuclear explosion where all the frozen supermarket pizzas will be cooked to perfection. Yeah, well, the temperature will be right, but there may, in fact, be other issues. Yes. I found out since then, somebody put in a comment that apparently the Oppenheimer movie is available already on Paramount Plus. I haven't checked yet, but I believe them. Good to know. Okay, this one I titled Music for Buzz Lightyear. Need a rim shot there. And it says, want to listen to some music? I've got Bebop, Beethoven, Beyonce, the Beatles, Beastie Boys, Crosby, Stills and Nash, and Justin Bieber. And the reply is, do you have anything from Sting? Again, rim shot. Yeah, very good. So I had to throw in, what's the buzz? Tell me what's a happening. That's from Jesus Christ Superstar. That's as good as I could throw in from that. There you go. I'll just move on. I had to title this Liver and Let Die. There's Hannibal Lecter from Silence of the Lambs, and he says, follow me for more recipes. Yes. Liver, fava beans, and a nice Chianti. Make that to go. Rimshot. Yeah. Easter is coming. Now, this one, I tried to show it to my wife, but she didn't really recognize the song. I presume most of the people who read this are going to know Creep from Radiohead. When you were here before, couldn't look you in the eye. You're shaped like a bunny. Your foil makes me cry. You're sold for $3.50 in a beautiful box. And I wish I was chocolate. You're so full of chocolate. But I'm a peep. I'm a marshmallow. What the hell am I doing here? Wait until Easter. Wait until Easter. Yeah, okay. I was going to save that for a few weeks, but that was just too good. I really love that. In fact, the band that I'm occasionally part of, the band of Java developers known as the Null Pointers, looks like they're going to be playing a show at DevNexus, the conference in Atlanta in April, which will be right around Easter. I think it might be right after. I'm going to have to mention this to the guys in the band. We even do a version of Creep, so I don't know. We'll see. Okay, this I thought was very funny. I'm thinking of bringing this up to my Trinity students. It's some aliases for Git, and alias such as Git and very is Git and wow is Git status. So you could write, wow, such commit, very push. Actually, now that I think about it, it probably should be such commit, very push, and then wow. I went to a meme generator and did that one myself, but now that I look at it, I wonder if the wow should be at the bottom. But at any rate, I thought it was funny. The question is that meme, of course, came up with Dogecoin, which is, I don't know, 3-4 years old now at this point, maybe 2 or 3 years. That time moves fast in that community. I wonder if it'll be too dated for any of my undergraduates to get it, but we'll see. Okay. Beyond the Pale. Yeah, this one I identify with. L. Gray said, not saying I'm too pale, but a vampire just offered me a blood transfusion and a cookie. And I gotta say, I feel that every time I watch one of my own videos. Oh my goodness, I am such a pasty geek, it's just, I really need to get out in the sun more. Okay, moving on. AI versus cats training requires enormous effort. Yes. Only responds to carefully engineered prompts. Sure. Bad at basic math. May or may not plan to destroy all humans. Definitely. And finally, makes buying new graphics cards impossible. Yeah, AI is more for that. Yeah, I can see that. And then finally, this old gag with Picard and Riker meme. Someone stole the P from the pirate. Was he mad? He was irate. So I didn't have a follow-up on that gag, and I'm rather pleased in a way that I didn't. So thank you for paying attention. The video version is what you're watching now. Thank you again for this. I think I'm just going to say, let's trigger that theme song, and please subscribe so that you don't miss any future newsletters and other technical videos coming up soon. Take care, everybody.
It's time to tune in to Tales from the Jar, so let's begin. Java, Kotlin, and Spring, oh my. Groovy, Gradle, don't be shy. Tales from the Jar side, oh yeah. Crack open the code, let's take a ride. From design patterns to the latest trends, your weekly tech toast that never ends.